The moment she walked into his office, Ethan knew his life would never be the same again. He had hired assistants before, most of them competent, a few forgettable, but none of them were like Alara. She was tall, graceful, and had an air of elegance that made everything around her seem dull. Her skin had a faint, silvery glow that shimmered under the office lights, and her long bluish-silver hair flowed like silk. But the real kicker? Her eyes, large, glowing, and the color of the ocean on a calm day. "Mr. Ethan Williams," she said, her voice soft but melodic, almost musical. Ethan blinked, scrambling to hide his surprise as he stood up from his chair. Yes, that's me. You must be Alara." She nodded, offering him a professional, slightly awkward smile. "Yes, I am here as part of the Human-Alien Integration Program. I will be assisting you with, what did they call it? Ah, yes, daily office tasks." Ethan extended his hand, hesitating slightly before committing to the handshake. Her hand was cool to the touch, and her grip was delicate but firm. "Well, welcome to the team," he said with a smile. "I'm glad you made it here safely." Alara tilted her head slightly, her glowing markings faintly pulsing along her temples. "Your planet's public transportation is puzzling. There are so many humans in one space, yet none of them speak to each other. It was unsettling." Ethan laughed, motioning for her to take a seat. "Yeah, welcome to Earth. We're not big on small talk during the commute." Alara gracefully sat down across from him, pulling out a small glowing device that looked far too advanced for Earth standards. "I am ready to begin my duties, Mr. Williams. My cognitive capacity far exceeds your Earth technology. I will ensure peak productivity." Ethan raised an eyebrow, trying not to smirk. "That's great, Alara, but you're working in an office, not piloting a starship. You'll mostly be handling emails, organizing reports, and occasionally dealing with clients." She nodded seriously. "Understood. I will master your primitive communication systems immediately." Ethan chuckled, realizing she was dead serious. "All right then. Let me show you your desk." A few minutes later, Alara sat at her workstation, tapping her glowing fingertips against the keyboard. Ethan watched her from the corner of his eye, amazed at how quickly she adapted. She scanned the screen, her eyes flashing brighter as she absorbed information at an alarming speed. "Humans use far too many words to say very little," Alara muttered under her breath, clearly unimpressed by corporate emails. Ethan stifled a laugh, shaking his head. "Welcome to office life, Alara. You'll get used to it." She glanced up at him, her face serious. "If I am to work here, I will optimize efficiency. Your communication methods are flawed." "Good luck with that," Ethan replied, leaning back in his chair. He had a feeling that Alara's presence was going to cause more chaos than efficiency. For now, though, everything seemed fine. What Ethan didn't realize was that Alara's alien biology was far more complicated than anyone thought. And soon, things would get hilariously out of hand. The first 2 days with Alara were almost too good to be true. Ethan couldn't believe how efficient she was. She handled emails like a machine, organized files perfectly, and even smoothed over angry clients with a calm, almost hypnotic tone. By day 3, though, things started to feel strange. It began when Ethan walked into the office that morning and was immediately hit by a smell. Not a bad smell. Not at all. It was sweet, like fresh flowers mixed with something warm and inviting. Whatever it was, it made Ethan stop in his tracks. "What in the world?" he mumbled, sniffing the air. Alara looked up from her desk, her glowing eyes locking on him. "Good morning, Mr. Williams." Ethan blinked, snapping out of it. Morning, Alara." He cleared his throat, trying to focus. "What's that smell?" Alara tilted her head, her markings glowing faint lavender. "Smell? I do not detect anything unusual." Ethan frowned, rubbing the back of his neck as he made his way to his desk. Maybe it's nothing." But as the morning went on, the smell only got stronger. It wasn't just Ethan who noticed it. His coworkers were acting weird too. "Do you smell that?" asked Mark from accounting, who wandered into Ethan's office looking unusually dazed. "Yeah," Ethan muttered. "I can't figure it out. It's everywhere." Mark leaned against the doorframe, staring blankly into the hallway. "I don't know what it is, man, but it makes me feel good. Like really good. Is that weird?" Ethan gave him a skeptical look. "It's definitely weird. Go drink some water or something." By lunchtime, the office was practically in chaos. People were acting distracted, wandering the halls with dreamy looks on their faces. Conversations devolved into laughter or awkward pauses. Someone even tried to send a spreadsheet with nothing but hearts in the data cells. Ethan finally turned to Alara, who was typing away calmly at her desk as if nothing was happening. "Alara," Ethan said, crossing his arms, "something's going on. Everyone's acting weird. And it started this morning." Alara paused, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Weird? Please clarify. You don't notice anything? The smell? The way everyone is acting all loopy?" Alara's markings flickered lavender again, a sign, Ethan had learned, that she was thinking. Slowly, her eyes widened, and she sat up straighter. "Oh no." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, oh no?" Alara looked genuinely embarrassed, her glowing skin shifting faint pink. "It seems I may have released pheromones." "Pheromones," Ethan repeated, his eyes widening. She nodded quickly. "Yes, my species emits pheromones during times of emotional calm or confidence. They are harmless but can influence less evolved species." "Less evolved," Ethan muttered, before shaking his head. "Wait, are you saying you've been drugging the office with alien perfume?" "I did not intend to," Alara said, her voice defensive but flustered. "It is a natural biological process." Ethan stared at her, then out at the office chaos unfolding around them. "Well," he said finally, rubbing his temples, "this is going to be fun to explain to HR." Alara blinked, her markings glowing brighter. "HR. Human Resources," Ethan said with a sigh. "But trust me, this is beyond anything they can handle." Ethan sat at his desk, watching the chaos unfold outside his office window. What had once been a quiet, focused workspace had turned into something out of a comedy show. A group of coworkers stood near the coffee machine, giggling uncontrollably. Mark from accounting was staring dreamily at a spreadsheet with hearts doodled in the margins. Two others were trying to hold a meeting, but every word turned into laughter or awkward sighs. "This can't be happening," Ethan muttered, rubbing his temples. He turned to Alara, who sat calmly at her desk as though nothing was wrong. "Alara," Ethan said firmly, "you have to fix this." Alara turned toward him, her expression innocent but confused. "Fix it? How do you propose I do that? This is a biological reaction beyond my control." Ethan stood up and paced the room, his frustration growing. "You're telling me your pheromones have turned the entire office into love-struck weirdos, and you don't know how to stop it." Alara's glowing markings pulsed lavender, her version of deep thought. "The pheromones will fade naturally in a few hours. Until then, perhaps, your coworkers could practice deep breathing." "Deep breathing?" Ethan asked incredulously, throwing up his hands. "This isn't yoga class, Alara. Half the office looks like they're about to write poetry for the stapler." Alara tilted her head. "Poetry? For a tool? That is unusual." Ethan groaned and sank into his chair. "This is going to get me fired." Suddenly, there was a knock at his office door. Before Ethan could respond, the door swung open and in walked Mr. Hayes, the grumpy, no-nonsense manager of the entire floor. Hayes looked around the office with narrowed eyes. Behind him, a nearby worker was spinning in his chair like a child, while another was staring at a plant, signing wistfully. "Williams," Hayes barked, his deep voice cutting through the air. "What is going on here?" Ethan shot Laura a glance, silently pleading for her to not say anything weird. Just a rough morning, sir, Ethan said, forcing a smile. Maybe some bad coffee. Hayes frowned. Bad coffee doesn't explain Mark hugging a filing cabinet. Ethan winced, looking over to see Mark whispering something lovingly to the metal drawer. He's been under a lot of stress lately. Hayes crossed his arms, clearly not convinced. Get this under control, Williams, or I'll be sending HR down here. As Hayes turned to leave, Laura raised a hand politely. Sir, if I may. Ethan cut her off, panic flashing across his face. Nope. We've got this under control. Thank you, sir. Once Hayes left, Ethan spun to face Laura, lowering his voice. What were you thinking? I was going to offer him breathing techniques, she said matter-of-factly. Ethan stared at her, his face a mix of disbelief and exhaustion. No breathing. Just stay here, don't talk to anyone, and stop glowing so much. Laura's markings pulsed faint pink. I cannot control the glowing. It is part of my charm. Ethan dropped his head onto the desk with a groan. I'm doomed. Outside, someone began singing an improvised love song to the office printer. Ethan was on the verge of losing his mind. The office was still a mess, though now it had evolved into an even more chaotic spectacle. Mark from accounting had declared his undying love for the coffee machine. Someone in it was handing out paper flowers to anyone who passed by, and two coworkers were having an intense conversation with a potted plant. And Laura. She sat calmly at her desk, typing away as though nothing strange was happening. Her silver-blue hair shimmered softly, and her glowing markings pulsed faintly with lavender, a sign, Ethan had realized, that she was amused. Are you enjoying this? Ethan asked, throwing his hands in the air. Laura glanced up, her large, glowing eyes unbothered. Enjoying? No, I am merely observing the effects. Your species' reaction to my pheromones is fascinating. Fascinating. Ethan groaned. It's horrifying. You've turned this place into a soap opera. Before Laura could respond, a voice boomed from the hallway. Ethan Williams. HR needs to see you immediately. Ethan froze. His heart sank. There in the doorway stood Claire, the HR manager, a woman who never smiled, never joked, and had perfected the art of glaring at people over the tops of her glasses. Ethan smiled weakly. Hey, Claire. What's up? Claire didn't look amused. What's up? The office has descended into madness. People are giggling, saying to furniture, and dancing in hallways. What are you doing in here? It's a long story, Ethan stammered. Claire's eyes narrowed. Well, you're telling it. Now. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He shot Laura a look. Stay here. Do not move. And whatever you do, don't talk to anyone. Laura tilted her head, her markings flickering with a soft lavender glow. Why not? Because we're trying to fix this, not make it worse, Ethan muttered as he followed Claire into the hallway. In the HR office, Claire sat across from Ethan, her hands folded neatly on the desk. Explain. Now. Ethan squirmed under her gaze. Look, Claire, I know this looks bad, but it's complicated. Complicated. Claire raised an eyebrow. Mark proposed marriage to the water cooler. Ethan. Ethan winced. Yeah, about that. Before he could finish, the office door swung open, and Laura walked in gracefully. Her silver hair shimmered, her glowing markings pulsing faint pink. Excuse me. I believe I am needed here. Claire's jaw dropped as she stared at Laura. Who is this? Laura smiled warmly. I am Laura, Mr. Williams's assistant. Claire blinked, clearly caught off guard by Laura's glowing beauty. And what is happening to my office? Laura clasped her hands together. It is possible that I have unintentionally released pheromones. My species emits them naturally as part of emotional calm. Claire stared blankly. Pheromones. Ethan sighed. Alien pheromones. Yeah, It's a whole thing. Claire rubbed her temples. This is a nightmare. Alara smiled brightly, her markings glowing soft blue. Do not worry. The effects will wear off soon. Perhaps your staff could try breathing exercises. Ethan groaned, dropping his head into his hands. Not the breathing again. Ethan slumped back in his chair, staring at Alara, who was now calmly sipping water as if the office hadn't fallen into complete chaos. Claire from HR had gone back to her office after promising to send a report to upper management, and Ethan knew his job was now hanging by a thread. All right, Alara, Ethan said, rubbing his temples. You need to help me fix this. The office looks like a mix of a daycare and a talent show gone wrong. We can't wait for this to wear off. Alara tilted her head gracefully, her glowing markings pulsing faint lavender. I understand the situation is disruptive, Mr. Williams, but my pheromones are a biological function. Suppressing them is not simple. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Not simple, huh? So you can suppress them. Alara hesitated, her soft blue glow flickering uncertainly. There are methods. However, they are uncomfortable. Ethan leaned forward, hopeful. Uncomfortable is fine. You're not the one who had to explain to Claire why 3 people are doing yoga in the hallway. Alara blinked. Yoga? That is a productive exercise for human flexibility. That's not the point. Ethan groaned. Okay, what's the method? Alara sighed softly, the glow in her markings dimming. A temperature change could help. My body emits pheromones when I feel calm or neutral, so I must disrupt that state. A sudden cold environment will force my body to reduce the output. Ethan froze, staring at her. Cold. That's it. Yes. Alara nodded as if this were a perfectly normal solution. Your human refrigerators, for example, could suffice temporarily. Ethan blinked. You're joking. I do not joke, Alara replied matter-of-factly. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. You're telling me we just need to stick you in a cold place, and this whole thing will stop? Yes, it is logical. He stood up quickly, already forming a plan. All right, fine. There's an old server room at the end of the hallway. It's freezing in there. Hasn't worked right for months. That's where we're going. Alara rose elegantly from her chair, adjusting her uniform with grace. I will comply. If this resolves the disruption, I am ready. The great cold escape. Ethan and Alara marched down the hallway, dodging confused employees. Someone had set up a circle of chairs where 3 people were reciting poetry about office supplies. Another worker sat cross-legged on the floor, holding a stapler as though it were sacred. Eyes forward, Alara, Ethan muttered, ignoring the chaos. Your coworkers appear happy, Alara said innocently. My pheromones are very effective. They're too effective. Ethan shot back, pushing open the door to the freezing server room. A gust of icy air hit them both, and Alara shivered visibly. This place is unpleasant, she admitted. Good. That means it's working, Ethan said. Get in here, and let's cool you off. Alara stepped inside, her silver blue hair blowing slightly in the draft. Her glowing markings flickered as the cold air began to work. She crossed her arms, clearly uncomfortable. This feels unnatural. Ethan grinned. Welcome to Earth. Now hurry up and dayglow, princess. As Alara sat in the freezing room, Ethan leaned against the door, waiting. He couldn't help but chuckle to himself, fixing an office disaster caused by alien pheromones. That had never been in the employee manual. The server room was freezing. Cold air whirled around the small, dim space, and Ethan shivered even though he wasn't fully inside. He peered at Alara, who was now sitting on an old chair in the middle of the room, looking like the most regal, miserable alien he had ever seen. Her glowing silver hair, which usually flowed gracefully, now hung stiffly around her shoulders. Her radiant blue markings were dim, flickering weakly, and her arms were tightly crossed over her chest. I dislike this place, Alara muttered, her voice trembling slightly. It is Unnatural. Ethan grinned, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. Well, that's kind of the point. You're cooling off, and hopefully so are your pheromones. Alara shot him a sharp look, though her shivering ruined the effect. Do humans often use such extreme environments for problem-solving? Only when aliens decide to turn an office into a rom-com, Ethan replied with a smirk. Alara let out a dramatic sigh, her breath misting in the cold air. I have never felt this discomfort. My people are accustomed to warmth and harmony. This is the opposite of harmony. Ethan chuckled, though he felt a little guilty watching her suffer. You're doing fine, Ice Queen. Just a little longer, and we'll save the office from completely collapsing. Alara blinked at him, her violet eyes narrowing slightly. Ice Queen. Ethan shrugged. Yeah, you're all regal and glowing. And now you look like a frozen royal statue. It suits you. Her markings pulsed faint pink, her version of mild embarrassment. Your humor is strange. Ethan Williams. Humor keeps us sane, Ethan replied. He glanced at his watch, hoping this whole ordeal would be over soon. Outside the server room, muffled sounds of laughter and singing could still be heard. Suddenly, Alara sat up straighter, her glowing markings flashing brighter for a moment. Ethan. Ethan froze. What? What is it? Alara looked toward the door, her expression sharp despite the cold. The pheromones. They are reducing. But what? She hesitated, her violet eyes searching his. There is another problem. My body is responding to the cold. It will stop the pheromones, but it may trigger another reaction. Ethan blinked. Another reaction. What kind of reaction? Before Alara could answer, a loud clunk echoed through the room, and the hum of the server fans flowed to a stop. The lights flickered, and then silence. Ethan groaned, smacking the side of the server unit. Great, the system just died. Alara's markings flickered uncertainly as the cold air quickly began to fade. This is not good. The environment is warming. Ethan stared at her, wide-eyed. So the pheromones are going to come back. Alara nodded slowly. And possibly stronger. Ethan slapped his forehead. Fantastic. We're going from office romance to office apocalypse. Alara tilted her head. Is that worse? Ethan sighed, already dreading what was coming next. Much worse. The server room was silent except for the occasional hum of the dying fans. The cold air had completely stopped, and Ethan could already feel the temperature rising. Alara stood in the middle of the room, her glowing markings flickering softly, a mix of lavender and blue. Ethan rubbed his temples. All right, let me get this straight. The cold worked, but now that it's warming up again, your pheromones are going to come back stronger. Alara nodded solemnly, her silver hair falling neatly around her shoulders. Yes, my body will attempt to compensate. It is inconvenient. Inconvenient. Ethan groaned, pacing the room. The office has already gone completely nuts. If this gets worse, someone's going to declare a dance party in the conference room. Suddenly, a faint noise came from the hallway. Singing. Ethan poked his head out the door to find a group of employees dancing, clapping, and singing what sounded like a love song dedicated to the beauty of numbers. Oh no, Ethan muttered. It's spreading again. He turned back to Alara. We need another plan. Fast. Alara tilted her head, her glowing markings pulsing faint pink, a sign of mild embarrassment. There is one more option. Ethan stopped pacing. What option? She hesitated. I can override my pheromone release temporarily, but it requires a very specific state of mind. Ethan raised an eyebrow. State of mind? Like what? Alara's cheeks glowed faintly pink. I must experience emotional chaos, embarrassment, confusion, or disarray. It disrupts the natural pheromone process. Ethan stared at her. So, wait, you're saying I need to embarrass you? Yes, Elara replied with complete seriousness. It is the most effective solution. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Great. You want me to embarrass my alien assistants so the office doesn't fall apart. I hope you're ready for this. Operation Embarrass the Alien. Ethan and Elara stepped back into the main office, where the chaos had reached its peak. Mark was now reciting a love poem to the water cooler. Two coworkers were slow dancing near the printer, and someone had hung a banner that read, "Love is in the air." Ethan cleared his throat loudly. "Hey, everyone, can I get your attention?" No one listened. Elara turned to Ethan, her expression completely calm. "You must act quickly. Embarrass me now." Ethan groaned, thinking fast. Finally, he turned toward Elara, his voice booming. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Elara, Queen of Romance." Elara's glowing markings froze, and her eyes widened. "What?" Ethan grabbed a fake crown from someone's desk, placing it on her head. "Bow down, everyone. She's here to spread love through alien magic." Elara's markings flared bright pink, her face glowing in shock. "Ethan Williams, stop this at once." The office fell silent. People stared at her, confused. Elara's glowing blush grew brighter as she waved her arms. "No, I am not a queen of romance. Stop looking at me." Suddenly, her glowing markings dimmed, and the air in the office shifted. The strange, sweet scent faded. Ethan grinned triumphantly. "There we go. Problem solved." Elara turned to him, her face still glowing faintly pink. "You embarrassed me on purpose." Ethan shrugged with a smirk. "Hey, it worked, didn't it?" Around them, the office began returning to normal. People looked around, blinking in confusion, as if waking up from a strange dream. Mark glanced at the water cooler and muttered, "Why was I talking to this thing?" Ethan patted Elara on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Ice Queen. You're still the best assistant I've ever had." Elara crossed her arms, her glowing markings calming to soft blue. "Your methods are unorthodox, but effective." Ethan laughed, watching the office slowly return to sanity. "That's Earth for you. We always find a way." As Elara rolled her eyes, Ethan couldn't help but smile. Sure, the day had been insane, but at least the chaos was over. For now. The end.